Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Morning Woods podcast. If you haven't already, go down to the bottom, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. It really helps the algorithm. You know, YouTube doesn't show you these videos, but if you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, they're definitely going to send it to your feed. So today in studio, I have a good friend of mine. I've always looked up to this dude since I started comedy. Very funny person, Mr. Adrian Cosby, everybody. And
Hey.
you just recently did a weekend at the Funny Bone there.
Yeah, I was just at the Dayton Funny Bone with John Morgan, the Raging Cajun.
Yeah, how was that?
Oh, it's rare where you like. I guess I don't even know if it's rare, but I don't know a whole lot of headlining comedians who are almost the exact same person off stage that they are on stage.
Yeah.
It literally, it's
He
the
has
same
a,
dude.
he has a hard time turning it off, and
It's
that's
just
how you know a true comic.
for real, and it's also one of those things where it's like it's just a little less. It's a little the volume is less.
Yeah.
That's the only difference. When he gets on stage, he's much louder and more animated, but.
Well, you learn to embellish, and I think you learn to be a better storyteller over the years as a comedian. But I always think that too when I meet like people who are like very funny and they don't know how to not like be quippy 24/7. I'm like, oh, that guy's got a comic brain.
Yeah,
Do you think that's something people develop or something they're born with?
I think that's like a chicken or the egg kind of a question. But
Yeah.
I think for me, the first thing I noticed was when I started doing open mics and being inside of comedy and like improv and stuff like that, I stopped being annoying at the bank. I stopped being annoying like to my relatives. I didn't feel like this need to constantly be funny all the time because I had an outlet.
Yes, I got you.
And so I think that that's true for a lot of people because a lot of people watch, Comedy Central or whatever stand up on TV and they're like, I'm funnier than that guy. And comedy stand up is meant to be enjoyed, in a room, a dark room where you're cramped in there and you're really focusing on the stage because you don't have a whole lot of other options to focus on.
Yeah.
But when you're in your living room with a remote control and all the lights are on and you got 180 channels at your disposal, you're never going to be more like next than you
Yes.
are with your remote. So it's like that's why inside the club is a completely different environment. And I think that a lot of people think it's easy because they see people do it. They make it look easy.
Yeah.
Um,
They don't see the 10,000 hours that it takes to get to where it is that you're doing. And I think I can relate to a lot of what you were saying about having an outlet because for most of my life until I did stand up, I was just like, I think people just thought I was weird or just
Mhm.
I was just different, right? I just thought differently, like this guy nuts, but no, I'm being silly and I just don't know how to express it. And I think that it gave me the freedom to be more serious in my life in other aspects when I'm not on stage. Now that I have this outlet and I'm always talking to other funny people, like I've got it covered, like
Yeah.
100% in multiple ways. So I really like that. That was kind of eye opening for me when you said that for sure. And before we got on air, I know we were talking about the progression of a podcast and kind of like how this second wave of like video podcast now, which used to be just kind of audio, is happening and this new, I don't know, it's like a new world, bro. It really is. It's a new way to get discovered. It's like versus the TikTok and stuff like that, which I'm not saying that's a bad way to get discovered, but I think amongst comedians, we talk amongst ourselves and we maybe don't love the fact that certain people get maybe more opportunities than us just because they have followings. Because then when a lot of those people go up on stage without help from guys like us, they're not going to be worth much or be able to stay a touring headlining act, right, for a long time. So it's like, I don't know. I think that some people just get it. They just get that it takes time to grind out and it's a long con, bro.
It
really
is. It's a long con for sure. And it's funny because I've seen people who think it's easy and then they go to like their first open mic and it is. They have like charisma. They brought a lot of people and they're not even telling jokes. They're just like kind of being themselves on stage. I've seen it more times than I wish. But the problem is with those people is they never do a second set.
Yeah.
They're basically like, I was the funniest person there. If they're not going to pay me, then I'm not coming back. And it's like,
Something I realized, and I think I heard Joey Diaz say this one time, and it really dawned on me during I was listening to one of his podcasts, and he said that some people have presence, some people have jokes, and then every now and then you get like Chris Rock or John Mulaney or someone where like, oh wow, this guy's really profound, and he's just talented all the way around. You can't believe it, but that doesn't happen, right? All the time. You have to work up to one or the other. Sometimes you're just smart and you're a good writer and you're into comedy. And sometimes you just have great charisma, like you said, but like that balance, man, it's like you have to build up one or the other. It's like Fallout. You got to figure out I think you have to figure out who you are. Self actualization is a big part of this business, and like getting rid of your ego, and you know,
It can be. It can be. I think it's like probably the most important thing I could say is that you got to figure out what works for you.
mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah,
like before the pandemic, I thought I was gonna die if I didn't go on stage like 3 times a month, like 3 weekends a month.
yeah,
And when I was only working like 1 weekend a month, I was like, am I even really a comic anymore? And then I did like 2 years without doing any real dates. And everything that I did do was like behind glass or on Zoom or in somebody's backyard. And it was just like, this ain't it. But I got in touch with the fact that I wasn't going to die from not doing stand-up. And then when I did get the chance to do it, I was like, oh, that felt great.
yeah,
But it also like de-incentivized me wanting to do like any open mics or bar shows where I know it's just like comics who are barely paying attention in the audience. Like
yeah.
that, you have to do that stuff to kind of thicken your skin. And also if you can make them laugh, it's definitely going to work for other people. But sometimes you do those open mics or you go to these like long road trips in the middle of the night and you come back and you're like, I feel like shit for going out that bombed. I mean, nobody was paying attention. Nobody was even there.
You spent your whole weekend.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't want to say I'm cherry picking or being selective, but it's just like, I know what I like. I know what's working for me. And if you have to work every weekend to pay your bills,
Yeah.
then work every weekend to pay your bills.
But you're a working comic, and you obviously have found a way to make it work for you. Like like you were saying, it's a subjective thing. Like what works best for everybody. But yeah, I think that once you get to a certain level, you do have that freedom to be selective, right? Like once people kind of give you those attributes and you get those accolades as a comic and as a person in this business, more so than just an individual who's a comedian, you kind of become solidified in a way, right? And then you do get that freedom, and I think that that's good, bro. That you, I mean, I just went and seen Burr a few weeks ago in Cincinnati, and he was trying new stuff on 12,000 people. So what you're saying is not out of the realm of possibility. That's just what people who want to do 10 mics a week say.
Yeah.
Like, right? Like that's just beginner. I'm not getting a lot of gigs. What should I do? Kind of mentality. And I can see that you're obviously like way past that. So I can see that it's hard for you to connect to that even still.
The one thing that I'll say is really important about doing those gigs or even being just like a working comedian is being in touch with other comedians. And that's where you really can be in touch with comedians is at these other gigs.
Yeah, the community of it.
Yeah, because I think that even with the outlet of doing open mics, you can't really be a comic if you don't have friends that are in comedy. Because even then, you don't even have to perform if you're still like getting to exercise that comedic muscle with other comedians or like, I was working on this idea or whatever, or and they're like, no, don't do that or whatever. But just the way you can joke around with comics that you can't with what I call civilians.
Yes.
Can be very therapeutic. I know a couple of people that thought they were going to start doing comedy, but didn't start doing comedy because they were just able to hang out with comedians.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't even need to go on stage. I'd rather keep my job.
Yeah.
Make more money.
Yeah.
But it's also the type of thing that I think, I was like saying before, I think a lot of people think they're funnier than any comedian. That, I've gone to like these bar shows where they didn't know there was going to be comedy, and you see this one guy sitting in the back who faces the other direction.
Yes.
And he's talking loud, and he's like, I'm not here to see no comedy. And it's just one of those things where it's like, I could tell you got a lot of charisma and personality. You probably think you're the funniest guy in this bar. And
yeah.
I don't want to say I was that guy, but if I had never gotten on stage and I got to be 70 years old and I was retired from something I didn't love, I might be bitter that I never tried comedy, and I might like have zero patience for somebody, some kid coming from out of town to tell jokes in his local watering hole. I mean, it's like, it's an uphill proposition getting to where you can be selective.
You're right, dude. Yeah, I'm still doing gigs like that. I just did a gig like that a couple weeks ago where this chick was in the front and she was had her back turned, and everything I would say, she was stepping on it. And I was trying, when you're in front of a crowd that you've never been to and you're trying to make an impression, those first few minutes are very important. So I'm coming out with my very best stuff, and I'm like, dude, the 15 minutes after the 5 you just detonated and demolished. Like, you're not even going to like it. Like, my new stuff is what you would have liked had you just gave me the time of day. And it was so bad that her friends made her leave. Like, the staff didn't necessarily help us, but her friend were like, hey, what's up? Hey, okay, thank you. Love you too, buddy. But yeah, so the staff didn't make her leave or anything, but her friends were just like, "We're sorry, like
Yeah.
fuck, like we understand that you're trying to do like a performance piece, and it's like something that's already rehearsed, and it's like timing and yeah, dude, gigs like that are like you said, it's like getting into a fight or something. It's like you kind of like fucking you learn from those failures and like you learn like what not to do, man. And
Yeah. You zig when you should have zagged, and you're like, I'm not gonna let that happen again.
nah, because then I let her throw me off. Even for the rest of the set, I was kind of I almost felt like unwanted or underappreciated or just like I got that fucking depression like before I even got down from the bomb. The bomb had already set in before I could get down. Sometimes you can work your way through it and you're like, I'm just gonna get my bits done and we'll fucking feel this later when I get in bed. But it was just like
You feel that sweat rolling down your back, and you're like, oh,
yeah. I've had like two other ones in my whole like 4 or 5 years that were that bad, but that was a awakening for me recently where I had to be humbled and I had to be like, okay, I need to be on top of my shit. Don't smoke weed before the show. Don't just if there's something that I was doing, I need to be paying attention to it. I don't try to blame the crowd. Like, cause I feel like maybe I could have handled it better. I always blame myself no matter what because I can never go back and talk to that lady. Like I have to figure out what part of me wasn't connected with the rest of the audience or myself to make me not be able to finish the show in a proper way. No matter what she said, I just feel like I should have been able to handle it better. So I've been really fighting it, but I needed that. I think I needed that to become a better comic, right? Hopefully next time I can talk her down or something, be funny about it.
If all you did is like, and they say like, I've heard a lot of arguments that say like failure is part of the recipe. That's how you get good. And other people are like, you don't necessarily have to fail to get good. Like
Yeah.
some people always win. But I think that in comedy, having those bombs for some people has them be like, I'm not going to do that again. I'm not going to have it go that way. And I like to think that if you want to be an undeniable comic, then you have to be very adaptable. That means that, oh, well, this isn't my crowd or these aren't my people. It's like, well, then make them your people or become relatable to them instead of trying to force them into a different hole. But I think that you do have to be able to figure out when it's like, that was me or when it was like, that was them. And I think a lot of comics, I used to even be guilty of this, of thinking that like the comic that bombed in front of me set the audience into a place where nobody could recover from it.
Not true.
It's not true. I've seen it. I've seen the worst bombs.
And the opposite too, right? You always hear that. Like if someone
Do
crushes too hard, not true.
Not true.
Take that momentum and you fucking run with it.
It's really about like what you were just describing when, the first 5 minutes didn't go good. It's like, then you get in your own head. And when you're in your own head, it's very hard for it to go good.
Yes.
Or even like the way you want it to, because you're in your head, not in their heads.
You're right. I couldn't see that, but that was why I was blaming myself, but I couldn't quite verbalize what it was that I fucked up, right? I just kept looking back like, okay, there's something I could have done differently, no matter what. Like the show should have went well, and it was partly due to me, despite her drunkenness, or despite her outburst. There's something I could have did. It could have did crowd work, something. It was just me being a novice, and then being in the shoes of someone who was in a position where maybe, I don't know, I'm not saying I didn't deserve the gig. It was just a really well-paid gig, and I felt like I wanted it, but at the same time, at the end of the day, maybe I...
Sometimes you're not ready, and sometimes you don't know you're not ready until you're in the belly of the beast.
Yeah.
And I think that's like probably something I was very aware of because I got into comedy late in life, like in my, I don't even, 32, 33 or something like that. So
I'm 33 now, so that gives me hope because you're actually a working comic. So.
Be careful what you wish for. But yes,
it started at 28.
It just, well, you have enough life experience at that point to know, like you've worked at jobs where you see somebody get promoted and then get fired a week later because they could not hack it or whatever. So it was like one of those things I was like, I don't want to get opportunities that I'm not ready for. And that's always going to happen in comedy. One, because there's certain people that are like, I'm going to have you open for me because one, I don't have to pay you much. And two, I don't want anyone to do too well in front of me. And then there's other things that are just like logistics. Like my first couple of years in comedy, I drove a Prius. So a lot of headliners wanted an opener that had good gas mileage.
Oh, wow.
And so that got me a lot of gigs. But I was also like, I rose to the occasion. I really cut my teeth doing some really hellish bar shows that I thought were going to be like, I walk in and I'm just like, I got to go get my job back at Donato's.
But as the host, you have to take a bullet every single show.
You do, but I learned a valuable lesson on those. There's the most storied road booking comic in this region is a guy named Steve Sabo, and he's got rooms all over the country. Some are one-nighters, like once a month. Some are like once every 6 months, and some are every week. But he took me on the road for the first, I mean, I still go out with him, but I'd say we've been doing it together for about 6 years. And he's taken me to some very obscure places in the country, North Dakota, Minnesota. We've gone to Seattle. We've done Arizona. I mean, we drove back from Arizona one time, 25 hours nonstop.
Holy shit.
Just
dude.
to get home.
Full day driving, over a day.
But the thing with him is we would walk into these places it's like literally a dive bar, and in the back they have a curtain where people have paid $10, $20 to see a comedy show, and it might be 30 people or whatever. And what he would always do is he would always go up first and kind of break the ice and then introduce me. And that always got me a little bit more traction than when I had to go up cold, because he's the one that's on the flyer. I mean, my picture might be on the flyer, but it was small.
Or your name or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was like,
that's where I'm at now.
he was, a lot of headliners don't do that, or they don't do it well, or they don't want to do it. But this last weekend I was working with John Morgan, and he did it because it was just a 2-man show. He did it at the Funny Bone. And man, did it feel special.
That's really cool.
It felt really special, and I feel like the audience gave me an extra little bit of like, all right, well, this guy deserves to be here. Because a lot of times in a 2-man show, you got to do the MC's job of building credit. Like a lot of times people just think, oh, the first comic's never very funny. And that's not always true.
Yeah.
But if you think that and you didn't pay for a ticket, there's a good chance you're going to believe that.
Mm-hmm.
If you bought a ticket, then you're going to think everybody on the show probably deserves to be there.
Yeah. Man, that's great, bro. I can't wait to get those bad road gigs so I can tell these stories.
I know, man.
This is actually fun. At the end of the day, I look back on some of the like shitty gigs. I haven't had like a crazy gigs, but some of the stuff that I have done or people that's given me opportunities and brought me along with them, I'm like, man, I can't believe that they did this. Like, who the fuck booked this?
Bro, my first road gigs, first time I went out on the road to do like a week of gigs was with Kenny Smith, and it was life-changing. And I mean, they weren't all great gigs.
It's crazy you say that. I'll tell you something about Kenny Smith that changed my life too here in a minute, but go ahead.
They weren't all great gigs, but they ended strong. Like the first one was kind of hellish, and like I said, like in a bar. It wasn't even a dive bar. It was like a nice restaurant, and they had like a curtain set up that was like supposed to be like a soundproof curtain. It's surprisingly soundproof, but it was still like everybody else in the bar that didn't pay to see the show got to hear the show.
Yeah.
And it was after I think we drove like 9 hours to get to the first show. And then we did like 5 shows, and like one show a night for the next 4 nights. And I remember that first show, Kenny got in a fight with the manager because they had like, it was like $2 burger night or $5 burger night or what anything. But they were like third pound burgers. They were big cheeseburgers, but they didn't have cheese on them. It was $1 for every topping. That's $1 for cheese. That's $1 for pickles,
Jesus
mayonnaise,
Christ.
ketchup, anything. It's $1 extra. So he ordered a burger, and he gets just like, cheese, pickles, onions, lettuce, and tomato or whatever. And he's like, this isn't $5. This is, and like, oh yeah, well, it's like $1 for a topping or whatever. And he's like, well, you didn't say that. And it turned into like this big thing. And I'm just thinking like, Kenny, you could just like not take the burger. Just be like, well, that's messed up or whatever. But you could also just pay for the $9 burger or whatever. It's like,
so he's arguing with the management.
to the point where I thought they were going to like come to blows or whatever. And all I could think was like, I'm so grateful to be here. I don't know if I'm supposed to like back up Kenny. I felt like he was like, isn't that mess? I'm like, I don't make a scene, man. I'm like, I'm black enough that I don't want to get kicked out of anything in handcuffs. But it was almost every day we ran into a situation like that where Kenny was just so used to being on the road that he was like, I mean, like we were walking down the hallway one time and he's like, and he just grabbed like a thing of toilet paper off one of the carts in the hotel. He's like, save a couple bucks when I get home. And I was like, Kenny, you're making plenty of money on this. You don't even steal cheap 2-ply toilet paper or whatever. And I just remember thinking like, I guess this is like what my future might be like.
Yeah.
But in the end, it wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, I was never a headlining professional like Kenny Smith was. Best I've done is headline a gig here and there. But even as a feature, doing it for the last 9 years, I've never stolen toilet paper off of a cart.
Dude, that's hilarious. Man, I'll tell you a story. When I was 18, I went to Wiley's with my mom, my stepdad, and a few other people. And Kenny was headlining that night, and it was like the first live comedy show. I'd seen comedy on TV, and I was a fan of like I would listen to comedy on Pandora and stuff. Like that's how I found like Chad Daniels and Joe Rogan and a ton of people back in the day, and Patton Oswalt. I used to listen to all these Spotify stand-ups, so I was a fan. And so I finally get to go see a real comedy show. And like this dude, like when I tell you, bro, it changed my life. I was like, I want to do whatever that is. I didn't understand what I was seeing at the time, but he was splitting the sides of this whole sold out show downtown Dayton. He did like 10 minutes just on like Dayton and like the fucking cops riding around on bikes. And he's just doing like, what's it called when you're physical? Like just, there's like a word for like physical comedy.
Act outs.
Yeah, he was just doing act outs and he was just doing crowd work, dude. And he was destroying. And then when he got into the material, it was like, it was insane, bro. I was like, this is happening all the time on a regular level. I was like, I've only seen people this good on television. I can't believe that this is like here in my town. So it just, yeah, it hit me. And I did a couple of open mics when I was like 18. I did like 1 or 2 open mics, but I had just bit a bunch of other jokes and stuff and not knowing like the business or anything. And so I did well, but it was only because like you said earlier, like I had brought my friends and family to this bar show and they were like laughing and it was like relatable to them and me, but it was like all other people's material. And so I didn't do comedy again for like 10 years because I did music actually. Yeah. So I rapped and I have like a bunch of stuff on SoundCloud, like hundreds of songs. So I was a rapper for a long time and like a recording artist. And so I just wanted to be a performer since I was a kid, dude. I did auditions for Disney like when I was a kid.
That's fascinating.
A couple times I didn't get picked up or anything, but yeah, so I did a couple of plays and stuff. So I just always kind of knew. But then when I was kind of 18 and I saw Kenny up there and I was like, what the fuck? I was like, someday I'm going to be on this stage, right? And then I'll tell you a weird story. I'm all into like, I want to get into psychedelics with you too. I don't know. How long we've been going, Dylan? 22 minutes. So we still have some time. Okay, so I was doing shrooms, right? It was like the second time I ever did stand up, and it was at Wiley's fireworks competition. So it was the third time technically, but like within 10 years. So I went and do Sunday. I actually, it's a long story, but I used to work with this guy named Nick Taylor. You know Nick Taylor?
I know Nick.
Nick's a good friend of mine. And so I didn't know he did stand up at the time. We just worked together and we were homies and we would just like smoke bud together and stuff. And then one day he was like, hey, I got this show this weekend at Wiley's. And I was like, what are you, like a rapper? Because I gave him one of my mixtapes. And he was like, no, I don't sing or rap or anything. He's like, I do like comedy. And I was like, what is that? And so my whole family goes and sees him and he crushes. And it was like his first hosting weekend or something. And I was like, I can't believe this dude I'm just hanging out with like every day is like a normal person, has the same job as me. And then at night, he's like Batman. He's going to all these shows. He's like telling me the journey. And I got the bug, dude. And I was just like, fuck, I got to go. So I didn't tell him or anything because I was embarrassed. But I signed up to go to do a Sunday Comics. And I did it. And then I met Karen, and she was like, hey, you should come back and do the fireworks competition. And so I was like, I was in my head. I was like, oh, my God. Like, they're inviting me to a competition, and I've only done stand-up one time and shit. And I thought I was hot shit, and then totally bombed, right? But I was on shrooms when I did the fireworks. So
was that intentional or?
At the time, I was like experimenting with microdosing, and I was just trying to better my life. I was like getting out of music, and I was like I was just trying to just transition my life. I just got a better job, and my whole life was just kind of changing. Everything from the old, it fell apart. And so I just wanted comedy. I wanted a way to still express myself because music wasn't working.
So when you took the shrooms before your set, before you performed?
Before I came to the club. So I took too much. I took a little bit like a
But you were going to perform?
I was 100% going to perform.
Did you perform?
I did. I performed, but I didn't do well. But this was the most profound thing of the day. The most profound thing was I was like, at one point, man, I get chills talking about it. At one point, I was in the bathroom when it was painted red still. Do you remember this?
Yeah.
So I'm standing in the bathroom, and I'm reciting all these jokes to myself, and I'm by myself, and no one else is in there, bro. I'm sure of it. And, like, all of a sudden, it's not just my jokes that I'm hearing. I'm hearing, like, hundreds of other people doing the same thing that I'm doing. It was like all these other comics or something from the past. I don't know if it was a ghost or if it was, like, carbon copies of all the people who had done the same exact thing as me over the years. But it was, like, some weird thing. And then it like took me through this like weird trip, like portal. And I never won or anything. And I've only done it I don't know what it was. I was like, oh my God, is it showing me like my future? But it was just like, I don't know, bro. It was just a profound, something weird had touched me, some energy in the room that night. And so that kind of made me want to keep going on the journey for some.
I have like a kind of a, whatever you choose to believe about that experience is, however it serves you is how it serves you.
Yeah, I think I wanted it too. Yeah,
but there's nothing like peculiar about that to me. If I was going to say on a more like the thing that's strange about mushrooms is that, like, from my experience, is that it's the kind of psychedelic that has you feel like you're communing with another planetary force or some sort of like
It's some other
another
energy
realm. Yeah, another
that's
energy.
already here that we maybe necessarily can't connect with on a normal basis. But I was, for some reason, like past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I felt. I felt like I had like stepped through a time portal, and it was like all the energy from all the, when you get a lot of people in the building, and there's like a lot of there was just a lot of energy in the building that night too, because you have
for
all
sure.
those people and all those everybody's competing, and I'm also a believer that like certain people, especially in entertainment and certain, like the reason they call people like stars and shit like that is because certain people like hold light, right? Do you believe that?
Oh, for sure.
So, and that's why some of those people shine through. And like when you get a bunch of those people together, there's even more energy.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'm all about like energy and psychedelic. What's your relationship with psychedelics, if you don't mind me asking?
I would say that my relationship with psychedelics is, I've been married and I've been divorced, but psychedelics have been a constant in some way, shape, or form in my life, whether it was wishing I could find them or experimenting with them. I don't know. I mean, so I had my first like psychedelic experience when I was like 12 years old, and it wasn't. I don't advise that.
Yeah.
But I was young and I lived in California, and I don't know if you've ever seen the South Park episode when his parents moved to San Francisco. I think it's Stan, and he like walks into like a party where all the kids are hanging out in one room, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do LSD?" And it wasn't like that for me when I moved to California, but it was kind of like that.
Yeah.
And so I just remember that broke down a lot of barriers, because I remember being very afraid of drugs and like even pot and stuff like that. And after doing LSD at that point, I was just kind of like, I think the thing that I was left with at that age was most of what I've learned about drugs at this point were lies to keep me safe from drugs.
Yes.
But the reality is that drugs have a wide array of uses, and more importantly, people have a wide array of how they want to enjoy that kind of a buzz. I've never enjoyed like an opiate buzz. Like I've taken codeine for being sick. I've taken Percocet from surgeries and stuff like that, and it was just like not appealing.
Yeah.
But if you hear other people talk about it, they say it's like they knew at that point that they had found their drug of choice. And I think that's true for everybody. And some people, their drug of choice is like exciting sports, the thrill junkies and stuff like that. It's all equally as dangerous if you don't moderate it.
So what's your experience with DMT?
Man,
I'll tell you mine if you tell me yours.
my experience with DMT was one of, I was talking to my buddy about it the other day. The first time I did DMT was with my buddy Jer, and we got the DMT off a guy I met on Instagram, and he was in the UK, and he mailed it to us. And the first time we did it was like with the meth pipe version, and so it was like kind of like, this is kind of sketch. Yeah. And my buddy went first, and he was like, whoa, that was like crazy. And so then I went next, and I was like, I remember just being like overwhelmed with fear of like, what did you do? What did you just do? What did you just do? And then as it was kicking in, it was like this went from just like I was hearing the sounds, and then they just like turned up like everything just like went up a new notch, and I was just like, oh, okay. That, yeah. And I also got really calm. I remember thinking like, I don't know if it was my voice or, I mean, it was obviously within me, but it was just like, you know what you're doing. You've done all the research. You tested it. You know it's what it's supposed to be, and just enjoy it. And so I just sat back, and I just saw like all these really strange colors, and kind of couldn't really, almost looked like a snake was right in front of my eyes, kind of waving back and forth, and I could see these scales kind of popping with color. But I have never had a DMT experience like that since. They've all almost been completely different. And I don't know what other people's experience are with it. I've probably only really actually done DMT 15, 20 times.
That seems like you said only. I've only done it 3 times. So,
yeah. Well, I'll say this. I say that because it's only because I've probably administered it to at least 100 people.
Yeah. It's been like that the whole time, hasn't it? That's all right. So the first time I did it, I met this guy who was he was connected with this shaman from like the South America, and so the guy would send him the bark, and then that's the thing that's illegal to get here is the bark, but there's something here that you can get. So he had some like a geisha plant or something, and so this guy brews it himself, and essentially I go there. Like I said, I did it 3 times. So the first time I did it, I go to this guy's house and do it, and my buddy is with me because I was like, hey, I want you to I don't know this guy. Think that you go under when you do this. I just want somebody to be there to watch me over my body because I'm going to leave this realm for a bit. Just going to step out.
That's pretty accurate.
I'll be back. So I do it. I hit it like 2 or 3 times, and I go back.
What was the method? Was it a vape pen or was it?
No, it was like you said. It was one of those like
glass pipes.
It was one of those glass pipes.
Which isn't. It's not just a meth pipe. That's like what you would call a glass vaporizer.
Just the way. Yeah, it was just the best way.
Mostly used for smoking.
It was just the best way to do
and crack.
Over here. But okay, so essentially I hit it and I lay back and like I was like you said, I heard the sounds immediately and I saw colors and everything, and then all of a sudden I just like shot off like up through the atmosphere, I guess. I don't know. I felt like my body was just like accelerating at a really high speed. And then the next thing I know, I'm just like seeing all these colors and splashes, and it's just a very beautiful experience. And it seems like it was a long, long time that I was on this journey into space, and then it went black and then nothing. So I was just sitting there for a few minutes, which who knows how long I was in the blackness, but I was just trying to explore the blackness. And then I heard my buddy tell the guy, oh, you don't know how long he's been waiting to try this stuff, man. And then they were laughing. And then so I audibly heard them laughing, so I knew I was coming out. And so I laughed too. And they were like, oh, what happened? And I kind of gave them a trip report. And so it wasn't crazy. And I was like, I want to do it again. I want to hit it again because I don't think I kind of went through like the veil,
the
right?
final
stage. So maybe just 2 hits wasn't good enough. So same day, later that day, I get one of my cousins who he's like into the psychedelics and stuff. So I don't want to dox him, but his name's Jacob. So Jacob comes to my house and we got like Buddhist music on. I have incense, and my apartment was very clean. It was just like the environment was perfect, right? And I was like, all right, I'm going to go under first, and if you want to try it after, you can do that. So I go in, bro, and like I hit it I have a dab rig. So I take like a huge blast, as big as I can get. And then I was like, heat it up again. That way I can fucking hit it again if it doesn't work. So I like lay back, and he's like, got to get it ready again. And then I come to after like 60 seconds or something, and it was just nothing. And I was like, dude, I don't think it's working. So as I'm hitting this second one, bro, everything in the room was like Inception. Like I actually read a lot of places that most of the time you don't get open eye visuals. So I was like really surprised at what was happening, and it was so unexpected that I had to close my eyes immediately because I was very scared of the room like turning. And as I closed my eyes, I had this painting at the time that overlooks like this mountain in Italy and all this beautiful water over the ocean. And as I close my eyes, I like shoot through this painting, and I'm just like flying outer body over the water. And in the background, bro, what I see are these like these elf, but they're women. They're very like beautiful. There's 4 or 5 of them, and they're in the background. They're jumping and making hearts as they jump, 2 of them at a time, and they're making these like neon heart symbols in the sky, like fireworks. And they said, "Hit it again." That's what it told. I got chills when I told you that, bro. They said, "Hit it again." Because I was trying to go where they were, but no matter how far I was flying, it felt like I couldn't get close enough to them. And I said, no, right? And I was like, no. And I felt myself like push off. And then like I felt myself kind of like fall back into my body. And like I was like, wow, I was good on it for a while. And I was like, I was fun. I was like, I think I saw something. I was like, I think something talked to me, like a spirit, like multiple spirit, alien, elf type of these very beautiful entities. Though it felt good. It felt like home. It felt like they were very warm, loving energies. But I was scared for them to reveal themselves to me because I didn't know what kind of information was going to come back with me that may change my life, and it scared me at the time. So I was ready to see the fact that this is a facade in some way or another, some simulation or something along those lines, but I just wasn't ready to see the full picture because I didn't want my complete reality to break down because in that moment, I think I was already just rebuilding myself and kind of a few years into stand-up, and I was kind of reestablishing myself, trying to get a foothold.
I'll tell you, man, it doesn't matter who you are. It's literally one of the most earth-shattering things that can happen once you have what I would call, what you explained was like basically like a classic breakthrough, or your first classic breakthrough, where you heard a voice from something on the other side whether or not you were able to respond or commune with it, that's not as important the first time it happens, because most people react the way you do, which is like open their eyes or like, oh my God, I gotta get out of here or whatever.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people that were like, I was like moving down a tunnel and then I saw these like beings and they were like waving me closer, and I like was like, it freaked me out. So I just opened my eyes and just enjoyed it with my eyes open. And I was like, well, next time, follow them.
I will, but this is the thing. The third time I did it, it really scared me. So I had a bad trip on it. And it was like...
Was this all from the same source?
Same bag. I bought like a half a gram, and I was in my closet forever. I actually threw it away after this last trip. All right, so this is 2 years ago.
In a plastic bag?
It was, yeah, in like a plastic bag. It was during the pandy. So it was like right when everything got shut down, me and my homie, who actually went with me to get the stuff like 6 months earlier, was with me. And he was like, man, I just got laid off today. I don't want to. He's like, let's do it. He was like, I'm ready.
You ain't got no job.
Yeah, you ain't got no job. You ain't got shit to do. So I set up the same thing that Jacob and I did, and like made my apartment like as cozy as I could and have good setting. And I was like, I'm going to go under first, and then if you want to do it, you can do it. And then he was like, all right, cool. So I go under, bro, and I take a huge couple rips off of this dab rig, and immediately there's no roller coaster. It's just, it goes from sound, like a contortion of a sound, all the way until it's like the highest frequency it can get from blackness. And then all of a sudden, boom, I'm like face to face with a demon. And it's like a red-eyed, like long red eyes, and it's just like on my nose, and it's like, you want to fucking come in here and you want to ask me questions? Because that's what it was. I told Justin, I was like, I'm gonna figure out what's going on with the world. And I was like asking it verbally in my own voice. I could hear myself like, what's going on? Why is everybody sick? Why is the world falling apart? But this thing couldn't communicate with me in the way that we communicate language. And so it was just showing me all these images and pictures of like volcanoes and nuclear reactors and people blowing each other up and shooting each other. And then it showed me this little seed, and like the whole earth started from the seed, bro. And it fucking created itself, and then it blew itself up and took it all back. And then I woke up and I was like, bro, I was like, dude, I was asking it all these questions, and I was like, it wouldn't talk to me. It wouldn't answer me. And I was like giving him a trip report, and my dude said some stoic shit. And he was like, bro, they don't speak the same language as us. And I was like, you've never even done it. I was like, you've never even, I was like, what are you?
It's not,
but he's
untrue. Right. That's really interesting. So when you were asking the questions, were you asking with your mind or were you verbalizing them?
I must have been asking with my mind, because I don't feel like that I was in my body, but I think that my self voice was still this one. For some reason, I still recognized the self voice, but I don't know that it was this one.
Right. So my buddy Jared had a very kind of a similar experience where he went in with questions. I've never gone in with questions.
I fucked up.
Well, I mean, I think that's a natural response if you're seeking answers in general. And the thing he was looking for, well, he's kind of always been fascinated with death, not in like a morbid sense, but just I think his father passed away he was in his 50s, but it was like a carbon monoxide poisoning accident. He left his like motorcycle running and opened the door to the garage a little bit, but not enough. And then when he walked out there, it just hit him and boom, he was out.
Oh, wow.
But that happened. I think after that, he had kind of like this fascination with death. What does it mean? Is there an afterlife? All these other things. So he went in after DMT, like went into the DMT realm with those questions, asking those questions with his mind. I was sitting right there with him. And when he came back, he was saying that he saw this like somewhat familiar Egyptian figure. And he was like, what is death? What does it all mean? And the figure was like, yeah, what is death? What does it all mean? And he was like, no, that's what I'm asking you. And he was like, no, that's what I'm asking you. And he was like, and he's like started yelling, and it was like yelling back at him, but like asking the same questions back to him. I think this is really probably a butchered version of his memory. But when he came back, he was trying to describe to me what the Egyptian figure looked like. And I was like, I don't study Egyptian or anything like that. But the next day he sent me a picture of it. Texted me a picture of it. He's like, this is what I saw last night. Like literally without the same, it was like black and gold, but his was like black and white. And he was like, I was like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, yeah, what's interesting though is that this is the symbol for the Egyptian god of death.
Oh, wow.
Right. And he doesn't study Egyptian mythology. I mean, and it might have been buried in his brain from something he's seen on the History Channel or something like that. I mean,
sure.
I don't know what it all means or whatever, but
it's hard to make sense of it too when you go to the science, when you try to explain it scientifically.
For sure. It's really just a matter of like, how does it serve you? What did it do for you? And is it beneficial or whatever. But I would say that for him, it did give him a lot of peace. He was dealing with a lot of anxiety that I think wasn't even really fully aware of.
Yeah.
And after that, he felt like it was gone.
I think that's what I took away from the first couple experiences, because I was going through so much at the time in my life, and I really needed like a wake up call and a reminder of my calling and kind of why God or whatever universe has sent me here. And I think that helped me get over all the bullshit and get past like my subjective problems that I'm thinking are so terrible, right?
Well, they are to you.
For me,
Yeah.
it's terrible, but you know, when you start to have that bigger perspective, that's what you need. So I love that shift, and I think that's what psychedelics have always done for me. It's funny that you said the Egyptian thing. I don't want to get too off track, and I know we're about to wrap up here, but man, my first couple of experiences having a high dose of mushrooms, you know, like eating 4 or 5 grams and having really high trips when I was younger, like my 18, 19, 20, I would always see hieroglyphs when the trip would start to come on. So for whatever reason, I would always see hieroglyphs on the edges of surfaces of everything. So it seemed to me that everything had like this code or this matrix, and then the trip would come on so strong, you would kind of forget but that was just one of the things I always carried with me, was that I saw Egyptian artifacts on things in the regular world. Just I would be at Cadillac Jack's, or I would be in my house, and it was there too. So I'm like, okay,
It's almost like trim molding decoration everywhere.
100%, dude.
I know
It's
what you
weird.
mean.
Have you seen this?
I saw it, and I've seen it on mushrooms. I've seen it on LSD. I've seen it on DMT.
So this is something that's common, then obviously. And you explained some stuff to me that you said some of your friends said that I experienced in my trips too. So it's like, obviously this isn't like just something that your mind is making up. That's what I always attest to, is the fact that something is going on. There's some chemical doorway or portal that's being able to be opened to let us access the spiritual or other realms of where we're living that we can't with our perception.
I don't disagree. And I think that even if that's not at what's at play, it's equally fascinating to think of the way it unlocks the way that your brain thinks.
Sure.
Or can interpret information or create this narrative outside of your conscious mind and then show it to you like a movie that you're in.
Yeah.
And it's similar to like a dream state, I think, but you do feel completely lucid with your thoughts, which is what I think a lot of people aren't prepared for. You're seeing these crazy things in your mind, but your thoughts are still your own. You're actually thinking like, I can't believe this looks so crazy. Am I going to see my dead grandfather? You know what I mean? Like, you're having lucid thoughts, whereas like with mushrooms sometimes, or LSD, or the more classic psychedelics, you can get inundated with confusion because it's so much information is coming in that normally your brain is like, don't pay attention to that. You're not going to pay attention. It doesn't even let you pay attention to it. But when you're tripping, it's like that part of your brain shuts down. So suddenly it's like, what is this made? This could be marshmallow. You know what I mean? So it's like, and when you say like you see the code in the matrix and everything like that, it's like that's your brain piecing together little patterns that you normally would never see, and it just casts aside.
I was just seeing it at a finite level, and I think you're absolutely right. And with those macro doses that I took at a younger age, I think that I've had the same exact experience. So that's why for a few years, I don't do it anymore, but I don't mind to. Like every now and then I will do it, but I like the microdose because I feel like I can take in more information over a longer period of time, and I really get to work out my problems and also kind of download these new pieces of information for my future that are helping me and kind of the people around me, is the way that I see it. Like that's what I see the downloads as. I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, the longer term, smaller micro doses, I think really help you retain that feeling of well-being for a longer sustained period of time, because you really get familiar with it versus just having this overwhelming sensation of amazing, everything's connected. It's good to have that and also know that there's still life problems and stuff like that. So as I'm going through my week, it's like I still have issues at work. I still have problems in my relationship. And even though I'm on the shroom, now I really get to handle it. And now I get to see it from their perspective as well. So it's like that mind opening aspect of it can still work at a small level. And I think it could be more beneficial on a long-term basis. But
and again, it really just depends on the individual, but I know exactly what you mean. And I think the phenomenon you're experiencing there is where taking a smaller amount of like mushrooms, especially, because I found that like even when I've taken what I thought would be an imperceptible amount of mushrooms, I still felt like I felt it.
Yeah, you do, no matter what.
But I think what you're experiencing is the more you take, the more information your brain lets in that is not useful. And when you take just a small amount, it lets in, it's less selective about the thoughts that get let into your frontal cortex.
Yeah.
So now you're getting more information, and when the information gets there, you're able to think about it in different ways with just that small dose. The more you take, you're still thinking about it, but the problem is 5 minutes later you don't remember it. Maybe
you
even
don't think
30
like
seconds.
that. Yeah, you don't think like
remember
that
it.
all the time.
You don't.
So it's almost important to have your main consciousness as the driver of the being, but let those those micro thoughts or downloads kind of fester around in there with your normal everyday life. I don't know. I'm not telling everybody to go microdose. I just feel like it helped me in a lot of ways. So
I think microdosing, my experience with it at least, has been that in the short term it's very useful, but the way the tolerance works with tryptamines, it's not really beneficial past probably a month.
100%. Yeah.
For me,
you got to quit doing it after about 4 to 6 weeks, and anything is you're gonna build up a tolerance, and you're gonna have to start taking more and more, and then it becomes a trip, and then it becomes I'm eating mushrooms 3 or 4 times a week now. So it can kind of be a slippery slope, and I think that everyone has a different regimen. But if people do want to know, there's a lot of information on YouTube.
tons.
People who probably know more than maybe we do just from our anecdotal experiences that could help you guys out if you do want to go do this. But this is one of the main reasons that I wanted to bring you on. Like, obviously I love you as a stand-up, and you're a great person to talk to all the time, but I always have a good vibe when I talk to you. But I just know you have experience with psychedelics, and I do too, and I thought it'd be cool to pick your brain a little bit and kind of find out how that changed your life, and if it did. In fact, it seems like it did, so as it did mine. So yeah, I hope you guys go follow Adrian. It's is it
At Cosby Comedy.
Cosby Comedy on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel and like this video. It helps us. Definitely follow me on Instagram as well. And are we friends on Facebook? I don't know. We should be. Thanks, guys. Peace out. Thanks for being here, Dylan.